Well, hello everybody. It's Alex again. I'm a couple of days behind schedule on my posting, my video making, whatever you want to call it. And I got a couple of things I want to talk about. First of all, I do want to talk about the fishing on Lake Fork. I haven't been anywhere else, so Lake Fork is all I really want to talk about today. And I want to talk about being weather aware because we have all this crazy weather going on in North Texas, and we all need to be really careful out there. And I want to talk about how to help your kids enjoy fishing. Um, I have people that want me to help them teach their kids to fish, which is always an absolute joy. I love doing it. But I've had to learn over the years the best way to do that and the best way not to do that. And of course, some of that's just from my own experience with my own son when he was little. Um, and so I'll give you a couple of tips on that. So first of all, let's talk about the kind of fishing report on Lake Fork as I know it. Um, I haven't been getting out as much because we've had lots of kind of funky weather. And so we've had a lot of good weather too, incidentally. But the lake is still low. It's still about 2.5 feet low. It comes up a few inches and it goes down a few inches. And then that kind of, it doesn't really affect it a whole lot. My biggest takeaway from water level this time of year is that if it's when it's really low, it's not allowing the aquatic vegetation to come up like we would like for it to, as all bass fishermen and women like. We like vegetation in the water, and it's not coming up very well right now because the water's low. This happens virtually every time the lake goes down. The vegetation either doesn't come up or it doesn't come up much, or it'll come up later, but not a lot of it. And the truth is that the bass really enjoy. They really depend on that vegetation. They for cover. The bait fish that they feed on, the little the minnows, the crawfish, all the little aquatic things that they eat in the water live in that what I call green stuff because it could be all different types of stuff. And so when it's not there, you have to find other ways to locate the fish. And so it takes away tons and tons of opportunities for bass fishing. Now, that's not necessarily true for other fishing. So if you're crappie fishing right now, you're going to look for fish in deeper water, and they like that structure. They like those old logs that are laying on the bottom and things like that. That's what crappie like. They gather around that. Bass become a lot more uh, kind of nomadic when there's not a lot of green stuff to hold them. And like for instance, I may have a bank that I fish, a shoreline on the lake that I fish every year because it's got a whole bunch of hydrilla and or maybe lilies or something growing out there that I've caught a lot of fish on. So I depend on that to hit that bank because I know it's probably going to be holding some fish. Well, this year that bank or that piece of shoreline, it's not growing green grass, and so that just pretty much eliminates that what is now just a piece of muddy lake bottom as a place that I'm gonna want to fish. And so like when I'm going out right now and I'm wanting to just throw top waters, which is what I like this time of year because post spawn bass I get my bigger fish with top waters and around around that green aquatic vegetation that's just not there as much as it normally is. So it might still grow on the same bank. Like I've got banks that still, or shorelines that still have lilies growing, but it doesn't have the grass growing underneath it. Or instead of it being 4 feet deep, it's 2 feet deep or a foot and a half deep. And so it kind of changes everything. And you have to learn to adapt to that. So, my advice to you is that if you're coming out to bass fish and you want to, sorry, I didn't put my do not disturb on, doggone it. Um, so if I start getting calls, I'll just have to turn them off. Um, if you're fishing a shoreline that you're used to fishing that is under normal lake levels, you've caught a lot of fish on, there's a lot of grass growing on it, maybe lily pads, whatever it is. And now it's not because it's 2.5 feet lower. Then my recommendation is that you pull off the bank and you fish out in front of it, even in the tree stumps. A lot of times that if you when you look on your electronics, you'll see that the grass is still growing out there in that deeper water, and those fish will just mostly just move back away from where they're used to being. And then if the lake comes back up, they'll return to that shallower water, and you can fish it. So I this time of year would naturally go towards topwaters. Um, the bass are in post spawn. They're aggressive. They're hungry, and you can see them chasing bait all over the lake. Now, what's happening this year is about 2 weeks ago we had a big um, spawning movement of carp and gar that moved right up on the banks and started disturbing everything. And these are big fish. These are 25, 30 pound fish sometimes. 10, 15 pounders are not unusual at all. You'll see them all day long out here splashing and carrying on. And they get right up on the bank. Their backs and their tails stick out of the water. It's how shallow that those carp get. And so anything that was up in the real shallow water, the bass wise, gets disturbed because those big old fish are in there just tearing it up. I mean, they're crazy, and they are tearing up the shoreline and whatever grass is in there, just make a big old muddy mess. I was up in a shallow area yesterday, and I kept wondering why the water was so muddy. And then I saw big old carp uh, doing their spawning thing, which is a very violent. It's something to see. It looks like a big giant in there splashing and carrying on. It's a big old carp in there, and that's how they spawn. Gar do the same thing. They're not gar don't seem to be quite as disturbing, but they're up there with the carp. They're up there at the same time, and there's some pretty big gar up there too. So I'm standing on the bank with my fly rod, just testing out some flies where I live. Um, and I look down in the water, and there's three snakes swimming around, carrying on. One of them's right by my feet. That don't bother me. They're there. They're part of the thing, part of the deal. And then there's gar in front of me, and there's big giant carp all around me. And I'm going, well, this is why I'm not catching any bass, because there's all that stuff out there. Well, the next day I went down to the same spot, and this is sort of the challenge this time of year out here. I go down to the same spot, stand in the same spot, and I catch two nice bass off the bank with a top water that I was actually had just tied, and I was just testing it out. I do that. I walk down and I test out new flies that I tie just to make sure that they're doing what I think they're going to do or not. I can adjust them. So you just don't know. You just don't know. So you're also fishing. You also have to figure out the time of day. So you're going to eliminate a bunch of shoreline if there's not, visible grass growing or aquatic vegetation. You're probably going to eliminate a whole lot of shoreline. And then when you find the section of shoreline that has what you want, you need to figure out if you need to go shallow or if you want to go deeper. And this is sort of a fishing rule from many years ago, old-timey fishing. Now, this is before live scope and things like that that just showed you where the fish are. This is instinctual fishing, the kind I like to do. Um, if you're fishing shallow and you can't get a bite, turn around and throw the other way. Throw towards the deep part of the lake. Throw towards the trees behind you. A lot of times you'll find that's where the fish are. So they normally stay in the same area that the fish spend their life in the same area. Most of them do. But then it's just a matter of, are they shallow or are they deep? And then of course you have to figure out what they're feeding on, which is we can all kind of, there's a big variety of things you can feed them. But one of the key pieces of the puzzle is what time of day are they biting. So a lot of my bite comes, because I like top water, comes in the evening when they're most aggressive, the last couple of hours of daylight. That's why I offer nighttime fishing, because it's so much fun. And the last hour of daylight and the first hour of after sunset are generally the first early bite where you'll have the most action if you got fish there. That's when they come up and they're really getting aggressive. So that's my kind of fishing report. So let's I'm going to start and we'll hit our kind of bullet points. Water temperature, when I put in right here, is around 70. I suspect that's pretty normal around the lake. It's going to be in the 70s, to some degree. Some places it may be a whole lot warmer than that if it's shallow and getting a lot of sun. Some places it'll be around 70. It'll probably be about the coolest you'll find. Also, the water is sort of, depending on where you are, depending on how windy it is, it's going to go anywhere from cloudy to muddy to a nice green color, which is what we like. That to me is almost clear as far as Lake Fork gets. Lake Fork always looks a little dark in the water because it's got so much underneath it. What that means is, I also have a video up if you want to look in my videos from last year. Sorry, I got a bug right here. The difference between cloudy and muddy, that's really important. Cloudy water, if you're out on a windy day and the wind's blowing over a shallow point, the water's going to get cloudy. It's just blowing that sandy water out with the wind. And the way you tell between cloudy and muddy is that cloudy is where the sediment that's in the water is actually floating in it. It's just sort of moving through it. And you can tell if you drag a lure through it, or your rod, you dip your rod down there, you run it through the water, or even look behind your boat, you'll see that when it comes through the water, it kind of clears that stuff out. So you'll see it kind of separate out and it'll become clear where you ran your thing through it, and then it fills back in. And that to me is called cloudy water. Cloudy water can be really good. It can be really good, particularly on a hot day. And the reason is because cloudy water is sort of like a cloudy sky. So I use cloudy water as, I try and use it to my benefit depending on where I am. Don't be afraid to fish it. Now, muddy water's different. Muddy water is where that cloudy sediment filled water goes through the top layer all the way down, and that's just muddy water. That's where you're back where there's a creek flowing into the lake, and it's all muddy and kind of yucky. You can't see. It looks like coffee, or it looks like chocolate milk is what we talk about a lot. That's muddy water. Muddy water is different. It affects the oxygen in the water. It affects, of course, the the light that can penetrate through the water. It affects a lot of things. Most of the time, I avoid that if I can. But on some lakes, they're just turbid. You know, some lakes are just sort of turbid. They've always got that discolor to them, and the fish adjust, and you have to adjust to the turbidity and learn how to fish the turbid water, the turbid color water. The cloudy water, you know, you could take a if you're fishing conventional, you could take a white spinner bait and zip it through that, and you'll probably have a good chance of catching a fish if he's in there, because you're using that cloudy water as a mask for that spinner bait. He's going to just think it's a little bait fish zipping through there, you know, a shad or something like that. And so learn to use those conditions to your advantage to help you catch fish. Um, so we have anywhere from, you know, clear to uh, turbid water on Lake Fork, but mostly it's cloudy, mostly just from the wind blowing and the water being stirred up. We have flirted with an algae growth out here. We've had it for a while and then it goes away. And part of it is that the weather keeps changing so much, and it's going from cool to hot, super dry for a couple of weeks, and then it rains for a couple of days. Everything is just kind of mixed up this time of year. And so you have to sort of adapt to that. And that's going to lead me to my next segment that I want to talk about real quick, and that is being prepared, be weather aware, and being prepared for the weather when you get out here. Of course, you're going to check the weather before you come out, because you're not going to come out if it says it's going to be stormy all day, and of course. But on the other hand, if it says partly stormy, or you know, 20% chance, and there's been some coming through there. Now we're all getting a lot more weather aware because we have the internet where we can actually watch these guys report weather with detail, which we growing up I couldn't get. You know, it was just it's either going to rain or it's not. that's that's about all you got from it. Nowadays you can kind of see weather patterns and things like that. It kind of gives you an understanding of how things are predicted to work a whole lot better. So when you come out here, you're a lot more aware of the weather possibilities. I've had many thunderstorms sneak up on me, and where I thought that either I was going the wrong direction or they decided to turn around. I'm not really 100% sure. But where we thought one was leaving us, it turned around and came back and bit us. And so you got to keep your eye open for that stuff. If you get caught in a bad lightning situation, there are lots of boat houses around here that don't have boats in them. I've done it before where I've just had to pull into one and just sit out the storm. Um, please do that. Get out of that. Get out of that storm. Now, if you're in a modern boat, you've got a auto bilge. Um, I've done this also. I've just put on my rain gear, anchored down, and just sit it out. You know, it's generally an hour or two at the most. And so the one of the things that can get you big time out here on any lake is wind. So you need to be careful. If you get caught in the wind, try and react by thinking through where you're most protected, getting to where you're the most protected safely. I have been caught out in the middle of big lakes when a big wind. I was on one lake where two tornadoes hit. We watched them coming down. We watched a wall cloud coming right at us. We watched two tornadoes up on the bank, and then we saw a water funnel. This was on Lake Richland Chambers back in the early days. Um, and so we had some really hairy experiences there. A lot of boats got sunk. Nobody drowned, but a lot of people had a lot of damage to their boats, including me. Um, and one of the things that I didn't react to well is I didn't react to where I could protect myself from the big waves. It wasn't the wind so much, it was the waves. And the waves are what get you, can capsize your boat or fill it with water or whatever. So you want to be really careful about that. Think through that. And I know it's easy to say 25 years later, but try and think through it if you get caught out in that, and have a plan. Even if it's just running your boat to the bank, running your boat up on that bank a little bit, and get out of the boat and get on shore. I've done that a couple of times. Um, it's a whole lot better than getting caught out in deep water. So that's my weather wear, and of course be prepared with rain gear and that type of thing. Now in my boat, I keep a spare poncho in a really nice poncho. I think I got it Army Navy. You can get them at Walmart, and I just keep it in there in case I have somebody in the boat that doesn't have one, didn't bring it, or sometimes I've used it myself if I don't want to go through trouble putting on my rain gear. Keep one or two of those if they're cheap. If you can get them on sale, get you a couple, just to make sure you got one for everybody. Those things come in handy on other things too. That's another video. Okay, and then finally, I wanted to talk today about this is the time of year when your kids are going to be starting to get out of school and they want to learn to fish. And I have a lot of people that occasion, not a lot, but I have a few during the year that want me to help them teach their young son or daughter to fish, sometimes with a fly rod, and then sometimes just regular. I don't care, however they want to learn. I'm here to help them. Here's a couple of things you can do. First of all, don't don't try and teach your kid to catch trophy fish if they're just learning to fish. They will reject that so fast you won't believe it, because you don't realize that when you go out and you catch two or three big bass or whatever you're catching, and you're feeling really good about it, that's because you've been doing it for a long time and you understand the accomplishment you made. The kid, your little boy doesn't understand that. He just wants to put something in the water and have something tug on it. He pulls. He doesn't even know what he's doing until he catches two or three of them, and we're all happy about it and helping him take them off the hook, and he's having a great time. You're having a great time. That's what he knows. And so, and trying to teach him to be big bass fishermen right out of the chute is just usually doesn't work, and it makes them not enjoy fishing. So the next time they're going to go, I don't want to go. That was boring. That wasn't fun. Teach them to fish for brim. Just take a little Snoopy rod and a little cork and a little hook and a little thing of worms, and teach them to catch a brim and let them pull something out of the water. That's fun. And that's fun for dad and mom and the kids. Everybody has fun when that happens. And they'll catch who knows what kind of fish. Heck, they may catch a state record. You never know when you're fishing like that. So and then the thing that I did when John was small, my son, and I would take him fishing, and would maybe have a guide. I would take a big old bag and I would put uh, a coloring book. He loved to color and draw, so I put everything in there he needed to color with: coloring book, blank paper, Crayolas, whatever he was using. And then I would have another big thing full of food, because if they get bored, they want to eat. So take a bunch of food for them. Make sure their bellies are full and they're keeping their little minds occupied with whatever little thing. Now I know these days, I know I'm old fashioned, because these days um, they all have cell phones and electronic things to draw with. I get all that, and you'll have to pardon me for. You have to understand that when I raised my son, we didn't have all that stuff. We had to actually do things by hand. And this is maybe even a good time to say, hey, we can't get phone reception. Let's take some crayons and let them actually use their brain a little bit. But that's your decision. Take something that keeps them occupied, and that when they get bored with fishing, they can turn around and do. My point with all of this is that we need to make sure that our future generations enjoy the outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, both, whatever it is. We want them to be adventurous. We want them to have fun. We want them to be able to relate to the outdoors. It's very important for them, and it's very important for all of us. So that's my that's my show today. I don't have any lure flies to show you today. It's basically the same as last week. It's top waters and streamers, and then later I'm going to tie a few up, and I might come back and do a quickie, a little 10-minute to show you a video to show you what I'm doing there. So I hope you have fun. I hope you get out here to some lake near you this weekend, or a stream, or get up to the mountains and do some trout fishing. Just get outdoors, get away from that TV, get your kids away from those electronics, and enjoy the great outdoors. That's why God gave it to us. God bless you, and God bless America. Tight lines. This is Alex signing off.